Recording in progress.
We'll go ahead and call this meeting order on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. A portion of the city council meeting is conducted by teleconference, and that Councilmember Barber is in Washington, D.C. and is participating today by teleconference. In accordance with the Ralph M. Brown Act, her teleconference location has been identified in the agenda for this meeting. Clementine, if you could do the roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Barber,
Here.
Councilmember Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Hoffa,
Here.
and Mayor Williamson.
And I'm here. And then if you, Clementine, if you could share with the public how they can participate in public comment, please.
Absolutely. For the safe attendance of our public meetings, wearing a mask is recommended and encouraged. Please keep phones and devices in the council chamber muted to prevent audio interference. And there are two ways you can virtually participate in today's meeting. You may join us using the Zoom app on your mobile device or computer, and you can also call into the Zoom meeting. To join the meeting on Zoom on your computer, smartphone, or telephone, use the link or phone number on the agenda at isearchmonterey.org. An up-to-date version of the Zoom software must be used. To call in by telephone, dial toll-free 833-568-8864, then enter meeting ID 160-772-9333 #, and if prompted to enter a participant ID, press #. Detailed instructions on using and updating Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To make a public comment using the Zoom app, you can virtually raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you dialed in by phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9 and then unmute yourself when you're called upon by dialing *6. You must do both. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. I will call on each public speaker in the order of their hands raised. Please stay within the time limit established for today's meeting, and a countdown timer will be shown on the screen. If you're connected live on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. Today's meeting is also streamed live on the city's YouTube account at youtube.com/City of Monterey with about 10 seconds delay, and on Comcast channel 25 with up to 90 seconds delay. And we look forward to receiving public comment.
Thank you, Clementine. I'd also like to just clarify that Councilmember Smith is not here today. He is out of town and so will not be joining us. And then I would like to request that Councilmember Barber respond to the following questions. Councilmember Barber, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Were you able to hear our proceedings on this end up until now?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of the agenda for this meeting?
Yes.
Was the agenda posted 72 hours prior to the meeting at the location where you are?
Yes.
Is your location accessible to the public such that any member of the public could participate in this teleconference from your location if he or she wished to do so?
Yes.
Is any member of the public there with you who would like to participate in the public comment portion of this meeting or otherwise address any agenda item for this meeting?
No.
Can everyone clearly hear Councilmember Barber? Yeah. The Brown Act requires that any votes taken during the teleconference portion of this meeting be taken by roll call. And with that, let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Councilmember Hoffa to lead us off.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Only because you look sharper than Gino and I. All right, first up, we have a presentation to recognize city employees, milestone anniversaries, and retirements. And with that, I will pass it to Hans to do the presentation for this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first three presentations today, or all the three presentations today, are for the fire department, and the fire chief is here to speak a few words about this. The first one is about Fire Captain LaFontaine. It's not, we start with somebody else. Okay. Only Ray. Okay. We will mention only Ray here. And Ray, hello, how are you? Let me do the give me the honor to introduce you, and also then the chief can fire away. I was in the chamber as a blonder management analyst when you celebrated 25 years in this chamber. And I shared it with you that I recall the day sitting in the third row, if I remember correctly, and had no idea about fire departments and all this, hardly know my way around public works. And there came this dynamic jumper of a fire captain into the chamber with a Marvel name, Captain La Fontaine. You know, that's like Marvel comics hero. Superheroes are named like you, and I remember that day that you were here in the chamber, and you were honored by the council of that time 25 years ago. And I remember, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I ever have 25 years? And here you are, 50 years with us, and still the same appearance of a person who can rip out any trees that we show him, and still a guy full of energy, dynamic, passion for the job, and a huge what's the word I'm looking for? A huge person who exuberates a lot of light, that shows your professional attitude to everything here that has something to do with fire. And you're a great example for everyone. And what I saw 25 years ago, you haven't lost a bit of all the energy, the passion, the love for your job. So I was impressed 25 years ago, and every year afterwards, I was impressed as well, seeing you around and hearing where you are up and down the state. So with that, I ask the chief to say a few words, and then of course we have also time for you to say a few words.
This on? Yeah. So if you think back to, if you can think back to March 1st, 1973, where you were, and many in this room, and including a large majority of the staff in the fire department, were not even born that day. That was the day that Ray started as a firefighter with the city of Monterey. He was promoted then in 1981 to the rank of captain. And I'm going to say once again, the majority of the staff here in the city wasn't even present at the city when Ray was promoted. And this is really unusual in any career for somebody to hit a 50-year milestone, and particularly so in the fire service, and especially still serving in the fire station on an engine every day that he comes to work, because that takes its toll on our bodies physically. And so it's very difficult to manage that for 50 years. There is one person in the history of the City of Monterey Fire Department that we know of that whose tenure Ray has to still beat, and that is the first fire chief, Chief Parker. He served as the fire chief for 52 years. So Ray's still got a couple years to go. Ray is still a strong, capable, and dependable employee. And one of his hallmarks is that you can count on him to show up if there's a need. If there's a vacancy that needs to be filled, he will be here to fill in the vacancy. And he also regularly still responds on these out-of-county assignments that we send crews on for 2 weeks or more at a time. And when you go out on these assignments, typically you get to work very, very hard. And so he's still performing, probably not quite like he did March 1st, 1973, but pretty close. When I first got hired here nearly 10 years ago, I went around and visited all the fire stations, and the first thing that Ray said to me is, "I've outlasted a few other fire chiefs, and I'm going to outlast you." The fact of the matter is, he has outlasted 7 fire chiefs. Kind of a nice thing about Ray too is I actually got to know his son much better earlier on in his career, and his son is now, I don't know how many years with the LA City Fire Department, and then he has 2 grandsons that are on the verge of starting their careers in the fire service. So it's not just with Ray, it's in the family. And his wife served as a seaside firefighter for many years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ray, but I just want to congratulate Ray on an incredible achievement, and we still love to have him here, and he's still a great asset to the city and to the residents.
I just want to say thank you. It's the best job I ever had. I tell my, I did tell my son a long time ago. I tell my daughter, she did work at Cal Fire. She's a Navy family now, but, it's gone by too quick. I'm still not ready to go. I'm going to stay until I'm where I can still do the job. I like doing the job. I like helping people. I like where I work. And I know my wife told me not to bring up the movie Fury, but in that movie, it said,
What?
the sergeant said it was the best job he ever had. And I said it before him. It's just that he took it from me. I didn't take it from him. So, I did work with Councilman Smith side by side. He was in the police, I was in fire. I'd been multiple times with him. I'm sorry I missed him and everything. If you have questions for me, I'm more than I can answer. It was easier with your secretary, Lori, asking me questions, and I could just give her the answers.
Yeah.
You were gonna.
I would just offer that I hope you can stay, it sounds like you have a 2-year mark to meet to be the longest serving in the fire department, but if you can outlast the fire chief, I think that that would be a better goal to meet. So
You gotta ask him how long he's gonna stay.
5 more years.
I've earned my next star. I will get it on. I didn't want to put it on my coat, and each star represents 5 years. And I know my coworker said, you've earned it, put it on. I go, nah, not until I've earned it. Now I put it on. I'll have that done.
Real quick, I see you have some family here. Could you introduce us to who your family is in the audience here?
My wife Ingrid, who works for my grandson Nate, and he's going to MPC, and he's taking fire science and EMT, and his goal is to get in the fire service. He's still young. He's 19. He's got time.
Well,
And my other grandson is he just graduated out of the fire academy in Los Angeles, and he's trying to get on with different cities down there.
right. I would just say that it seems like you're an inspiration, not only inside your family, but outside, and to hear all the work that you've done for the city over the last 50 years. I'm just greatly honored to see what you represent being part of our city staff. So thank you for everything that you've done. I'll pass it to Hans. Oh, Dr. Barber, why don't you jump on in?
I just wanted to just say thank you for your service. I mean, that's a long time in any position. And I just salute you for what you've done. And I'm just thinking, when I'm looking at you, like, you must have been 5 when you started the job, right?
No, I was in my 20s. And what's in 1973, I was the first guy to walk through the door that didn't smoke. And
Wow.
and everybody in the fire service then, 100% except for me, smoked. And that was one of my first jobs, is going around the station, emptying all the ashtrays and making coffee with the percolator type coffee maker. So those were some of the first jobs.
All right. So Ray, we have, of course, the traditional letter, and then we have the button that celebrates your 50 years, but we don't have 50 years, so we'll give you 2 25-year pens.
Okay.
Hey, Han. Han, why don't you guys come up and we can take a picture?
Yeah.
And you too, Hans.
Tell me where.
You're good. You're good. Should we get even here? Sure.
I'll get a couple photos here, Glenn. 1, 2, 3. One more here. Let me use the backup phone or phone. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Here's one more.
Gotta get them from my mom.
Thank you so much. Congratulations, Ray.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I missed that.
No, we'll let him know.
Yeah, I'll get,
Thanks, Ray.
thank you. Thank you.
it.
Thanks
No more.
for showing up.
Give me 1 second here. So I will, just for the record, indicate there are 3 other folks that have milestone anniversaries in 2031, the first quarter of 2023. I'm sorry. We have Karen Larson, Parks and Recreation Director, Parks and Recreation Department, 30 years of service. Lucero Valdez, Fire Captain, Fire Department, 30 years of service, and Robert Wilkins, Fire Engine, Fire Department, 30 years of service. I would ask all these people to stand, but I've been told that they don't want to be recognized publicly. So I think I'll leave it there. Thank you all and congratulations. Thank you for your service. We can wait a second too if folks want to depart. I don't want to keep you all if you don't want to stay. We're going to be talking about some good stuff though. You can stick around if you'd like. We're going to transition here to public comments. So anybody wishing to speak for their 3 minutes, we're going to start in the chambers. If you can go ahead and start lining up here on the right. And we'll start off with Mr. Rowley.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I think this is working. Yeah.
You are working and
Yep.
you're on.
Tom Raleigh, Vice President of Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association. I sort of have good news and bad news. On March 3rd, Judge Carrie Panetta issued a mandate for the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District to sunset its water supply charge, which was implemented in 2012. And when they received their surcharge was reinstalled on our water bills from Cal-Am water bills, they were supposed to sunset the water supply charge. That was in April 2016. They've been collecting it each year. It's now up to 3.4 million a year from all the taxpayers on our property tax bills. So anyway, they were told by Judge Panetta on our order dated March 3rd to sunset, and indications by the city, by their consul, David Laredo, at the meeting last night that they were not going to sunset it. They were going to wait until they collected the surcharge, the water supply charge for the spring taxes. As you know, we pay our tax bills by fiscal year, half in the fall, half in the spring. They're not overdue until, I believe, April 10th, and then they usually mail them out or send them to the water management district in May or June. So they have not received the spring. I do not believe it yet, but anyway, it looks like we're going to be forced to have to go and take legal action to get them to implement their own sunset, which they failed to do in 2016. It's been about $3 million a year out of the pockets of all of the taxpayers and all the people that have water. So that's kind of the sad news. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Mayor, we did have one person who wished to comment on Zoom on the retirements. Should we let that go, or?
Do we normally do public comment for presentations? Okay. Why don't we go ahead and why don't we finish public comment and then we can open that up so that if anybody else wants to speak there, we can do that too. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, I'm Steve Lightfoot. I'm the guy with the John Lennon murder evidence van, LennonMurderTruth.com. And whether I'm killed here in Monterey for speaking up or not, someday the whole world's going to see my evidence. Stephen King getting John Lennon's last autograph, advertised one great big Zippo writer, 3 months before he looks like one. The headline above Reagan, the day of the murder, Reagan, who's in, who's out? Reagan's in, Lennon's out, as he sits next to Nixon's book that talks about killing John Lennon. I cracked cryptography in the bold print of Time and Newsweek that proves Stephen King shot John Lennon. 50% of the county believes me. The others who don't think or choose not to. Now, I told you last time I was here that the last time it rained this bad was 28 years ago, an hour after the Monterey police detain me, possibly to arrest me for finding a poncho on the sidewalk. An hour later, bucketed down. And now that your police again have interfered with my free speech rights and cited me twice in 3 days for singing from my van like I've been doing for 3 years. Ever since my rally went poof because of all the police dramatics downtown, as a result, it's been nothing but nonstop rain since December 8th, you have to admit. In fact, the last time I was here, 2 days later, he had $500,000 worth of wind damage. I happened to be parked somewhere else that night. If I had parked in my normal sleeping spot, I would have had my roof on my van crashed in on a tree that fell. So I have perhaps an avenging angel and certainly a guardian angel. But the point of my being here today is this. People, if your government is trying to kill Steve Lightfoot for speaking up, if the Panettas and the Pacioni district attorney and your corrupt court systems and your corrupt police are trying to skin me alive, that's on you, people. Your government is only as good as you are. And if you're rotten people, your government's going to be rotten. And right now, the Italian mafia that runs Monterey is giving Italians and Monterey a bad name, coming after me. Now, I'm trying to find an attorney. I've seen the video of the police that were involved in one of these tickets. You're allowed 50 feet of range that you can be heard on, not beyond that. Well, me walking it off in front of the police camera, no volume after 45 feet. So they have no evidence. They've got a pissed off bar owner at the whiskey club and another pissed off bar owner at the Britannia who want Monterey to drink their troubles away rather than solve the world's problems. They got them conspiring with the police to make my life miserable. And if all this rain is a result of picking on me, I wouldn't be surprised. And if it is, I'd say you deserved it. Now, get your heads out of your butts, people. I'm a hero. I'm not a crazy person. I've never been on meds. I've never been in a psychiatric hospital, except when the police almost killed me one night and lied about it. So get your heads out of your butts, people. Help the John Lennon man.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager, the chiefs that are in the room, good evening. I'm Art Pasquinelli, and I'm the president of the Skyline Forest Neighborhood Association. The members of our neighborhood association met this week, and we're in agreement that we request the city council officially amend the ordinance regarding the management of trees in Skyline Forest in 2 ways. We respectfully request that outdated ordinances associated with tree removal, in particular, Section 37-10 of the municipal code, be changed to allow more personal choice where safety is an issue. The city forester will be in an advisory capacity to the property owner and will be responsible to properly manage the trees on city property that may endanger adjacent private property. 4 years ago, our association initiated and paid for a study by Thompson Wildland Management that concluded that the forest is aging and becoming unpredictable and less structurally sound. At that time, we sent a letter to the city indicated that the ordinance needed to be changed. Our Skyline Forest is overcrowded by years of misguided overprotective management. The devastation and inconvenience of the most recent storm events point to the mismanagement of the forest preserve. On an associated issue, the Thompson Wildland Management report talked about fire mitigation. We commend the city and especially Fire Chief Penholzer, the city manager Hans Osler, and for their work on our behalf to mitigate the fire danger associated with Skyline Forest. Great strides have been made in that regard, and we would like to see the same happen regarding the safety aspects.
In conclusion, we believe that the health and welfare of our citizens is far more important than the relatively few hazardous private trees that may be preemptively removed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I bought some property up in Washington, all trees. And at the time, my neighbor said, well, there's a leaning tree. It was about 100 years old. You need to cut that down. It's going to fall on your trailer. And I said, it was here before me. And if I don't like that, then I shouldn't be here. We are a tree community and thousands of us live under trees that could fall anytime and don't. And so those people that move in from San Jose or desert communities and they are just so afraid that a tree is going to fall on their roof, they shouldn't be here. They need to be somewhere where they feel safe. Every day we get into a car and we risk our lives. And trees are the jewels of this community. They bring us oxygen, which us people don't. They clean up the CO2. We are in a devastating climate change morality, which we don't even know how to begin to change and don't because of our lifestyle. And we have a moral obligation, every one of us, to save trees. There are so many trees that we predict are going to fall and don't. And the ones that are sturdy and tall, they fall. We don't know. So that means we've got to cut down all the trees around the community because they're afraid that it's going to fall on their rooftop. And I understand, I'm afraid too. Every time I go up to Washington, I'm afraid it's going to fall on my rooftop and it could kill me. And I think to myself, well, I shouldn't be here then. And that's how it is here in this community. And there's thousands of brave, wonderful people that have trees on their property and don't cut them down. So I hope you do not listen to this gentleman because too many trees are coming down naturally. That's the way nature prunes its own forest. And if we weren't here, the forest and nature and this planet would be doing just fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorna.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor,
Good
Mr.
afternoon.
City Manager, City Council, Chiefs, City Attorney. I'm actually also on the HOA for Skyline Forest, supporting the comments that Art Pasquinelli made. And these trees are at the end of their useful life. The previous city forester said that these trees were useful for 100 years. Most of the forest that's up in Skyline Forest is over 100 years old. It was from the fire burn off in 1910 that burned off the top of the hill up there. One does have to support the forest and manage out the old trees that are big, long levers that fall across the roadways, houseways, etc. But recently, the city forester planted 500 saplings that he was afraid would not get enough water. Seems God's kind of made a different plan for that. And if those saplings grow, then those large trees need to go so that the saplings take over, the oxygen is replenished, etc. And we manage a forest rather than have a forest managing us with dangerous devices. Behind my house, I can look at a half a dozen trees, actually a dozen trees by the water towers that have broken apart, run into each other and collapsed. Just down from there, 100 feet, 150 feet is another 20 trees that have gone down. In the green belt that's there on Pine Hill Way, I saw one tree hit and I went over and counted over 24 trees that are down in that area. Those trees are too big. They're not useful and healthful. Those little saplings will become helpful, but we need to manage that forest. the comments from the Thompson study that was done and the comments from 2019 that were submitted to city council, I made a copy of for staff to consider. The other thing that I'd like to mention is I think we need to lean on PG&E. Anything that's within their lines that's going to cause their lines to be damaged. We need to be a little more proactive on trimming those particular trees. In the area that I live in, I know they worked for 6 hours relieving the existing lines that were still hooked up in a tree. And they were like, we can't believe that it's going to take us 6 hours to do it, and why this tree was allowed to get to that point. Because as we on the fire service side know, every one of those high tension lines are not coated. So if they're rubbing against a tree, that's a place to start a fire. I encourage city council to jump up and down on PG&E and say, hey guys, we need to watch out for that kind of stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We can officially declare this tree night at city council. Good evening. I'm Lee Whitney from the Glenwood neighborhood. I'm the neighborhood president, also the NCIP rep for the neighborhood there. We are consisted of 5 large properties. 2 of them are huge assisted living properties where fire and rescue are up there a minimum of once a day. Last Tuesday, at 1 o'clock, we had a huge cypress tree fall across from the Ocean Forest property. We actually had to turn an ambulance away. He was not on a call. He was doing a drive-through because of the tree blocking his road, hit the area. I made a call, and within 20 minutes, I had a city representative and the forester there, and 3 trucks from WCA, your contract, the company contract guys with, and within 2 hours, that tree had gone. They had chipped at it like little beavers and took it out of there. And that road, we were able to open up the road again. That being said, I would like to give kudos, because we don't give enough of them, an attaboy to Louis Macuso, Thias Norton, and of course, your contract company, WCA, that takes care of the trees. Louis said, Lee, I don't know what I'm going to do. We're so far behind. Just, let me work on it. And he came up and they took care of it. What I want to say to you guys tonight is an ounce of prevention. We got to step forward and start managing our trees. I don't want to cut them all down. I want to take care of them. And I believe the bulk obviously is with the city responsibility, but I think the citizens need to get more involved, whether it's their own home or it's apartments or commercial, it's a business. I think people need to get more involved. Let's get them 30 days to kind of take and assess their properties and then start taking some action. They can get help from the city as far as, people looking at it. The fire department comes out and looks at my place, my 12 acres. I call them and get them once a year. So far, I've only lost 1 baby tree because we take care of the trees. Clip them, cut them. If it needs to be taken down because it's going to be someone's safety or on a car or on a road, then we need to step up to the plate and quit putzing around and how to correct that word and get it done. How many times do we have to hear about Carmel? Thank God we're spread out, but Carmel had just had 38 trees come down again. 6 were on houses, 7 are on cars. January, they had 45 trees. We can't be like that. We got to start taking care of stuff in our own neighborhood, and it's everybody's responsibility. Not all the weight goes onto the city. And you know what? This has a second part to it, because when we're taking care of our trees, we're also taking care of the potential fire issues that are going to happen. And we know we'll have another 4 years without water. We're getting enough of it now. But it's a double-sided that everybody can win-win here. We need to take action now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Good day.
Hello there.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. I'm Jeff Gorman. I had the pleasure of serving with Tyler, Mayor Williamson on ARC and hearing about trees. I'm here today to talk about my experience with the harbor and the harbor master's office. I've been on the wait list. I had been on the wait list for 15 years at the Monterey Harbor, paying my $10 a year to be on that wait list. I went in May to pay my $10, chatted with the folks. I went in 3 additional times before I purchased a boat. And I feel I was misserved by that organization, by the office staff there. They're all decently nice people, but it's extremely bureaucratic, and public service does involve process, and it's important to enforce the process. However, I feel wronged. I don't know what the process for appeal is. The harbor master has laid down his law, and I would like to know how to make an appeal. So I will plan to visit Mr. Uslar and talk to him about it, but I didn't want to be, trying to get special treatment. I really think there are some frictions and difficulties in that office that need to be addressed. So I wanted to say that, and otherwise, thank you. Good to see you, Council Member Hoffa. And so that's really it. I'll surrender the $1.50 back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Williamson, City Council members, Mr. Manager Unsler. My name is Jack Erickson. I'm representing Veterans for Peace, Chapter 46 in Monterey. We are part of an international organization with chapters in Europe, Africa, South America, and Asia. I appeared here a month ago to ask the City Council to declare our city as a community of peace. I will repeat my statement I made a month ago. In the 20th century, hundreds of thousands of mostly young men, including my father, came to Monterey to undergo military training at Fort Ord. Many went off to fight and some to die in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Panama, and Desert Storm. VFP Chapter 46 will honor these men who fought in wars on May 8th, VE Day, the 70th anniversary of victory in Europe in 1945. World War II was the deadliest war in history. 70 to 85 million people died. There was hope that peace would last. The United Nations was established in 1945. The Soviet Union exploded its first atomic bomb in 1949. Chinese communists won the Civil War in 1949 and established the largest communist country in the world. North Korea, supported by China and the Soviet Union, invaded South Korea in June of 1950. An armistice signed in 1954, but never a peace treaty. A new war had started, a Cold War. Today, we are living in very dangerous times. There is a brutal war going on in Ukraine. An estimated 200,000 Russian troops have died or been wounded, and some 180,000 Ukrainians, many innocent civilians whose homes, schools, hospitals, and churches have been bombed. Putin is suspending participation in a nuclear arms treaty with the United States. He has made threatening comments about nuclear weapons and attacks the United States and NATO for arming Ukraine. Last week, Putin was declared a war criminal by the International Criminal Court. Political relations between the United States and China, the 2 largest economies of the world, are very tense because of the surveillance balloon shot down by American F-22 fighter jets. North Korea recently held a military parade in Pyongyang with the latest assembly of intercontinental ballistic missiles that could be launched at the United States and the Pacific states. VFP is a member of Monterey Peace and Justice and Seaside, the home of local and peace and social justice organizations. You may know some of their members. We're asking the City Council to declare our city a community of peace. We'll sponsor an event on May 8th in Monterey and invite a well-known speaker to address our community on the anniversary of VE Day. We will coordinate our event with the Central Coast community, the peace community, veterans organizations, and the media. We hope the City Council will attend the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Jed. Appreciate you coming. A little bit of a side note too. I received your message and we'll try to find a way of getting a resolution onto our agenda. Anybody else in the chamber wish to speak during public comment for things that are not on the agenda? Right, let's go online, please.
Yes, we do have a few hands raised. Esther Malkin can go first. Esther.
Good afternoon. I'm Unfortunately, I missed making my comment while the firefighter that just retired was still in the room. I just wanted to express my gratitude to them and him in particular. He's seen a lot of things in this city over those years, including a pandemic that they probably never thought that they'd have to be such big participants in. And they really did help our city get through that crisis. I also wanted to point out that we have retirees, but we've got to find a way to get first responders to come to this area and replace some of these positions. And we really need to work on making it affordable for these newer recruits to come here. And I just also wanted to mention that while we think of, fuel reduction primarily when we talk about fires and incidences that are of concern to the cities and the neighborhoods, we're seeing clearly right now that the rains are another part that the fire department really is integral in helping us get through. And we do have to do a better job of planning for these climate problems that we're going to have more than just fire. So thank you for, the service that Ray gave. I mean, 50 years in particular in a position like that is kind of unheard of. I've got a number of first responder friends, and none of them have retired without injury or been early retired. And it is a big deal to have someone stay as long as he has. And I wish he had been there when I made this comment to, express my gratitude to him, but I will reach out separately. And thanks to the rest of the staff, city staff, it's been a really trying time. And staff and the council have done a really good job of keeping our city going through this constant, what seems like constant challenge that we're having this winter. And hopefully a lot of lessons will be learned that we will be able to be prepared more for the next crises that are coming, because we do know that they are coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Esther. Next, we have a telephone caller with the last three digits, 902.
This is Nina Beatty. I've received credible reports that PG&E operated a secret nuclear reactor at Moss Landing from 1969 until the mid to late 1970s. I raise this issue because Vistra Energy is currently demolishing buildings on the site and may not know of the potential hazards. In January, I contacted state agencies, consumer groups, and the Monterey Board of Supervisors to ask for an immediate halt to work at the site and an investigation. To date, the County Environmental Health Bureau has not responded, though I notified them in February. And so again, today I urge the Board of Supervisors to take action. A stop work order is a simple thing to do until the local weather emergency abates for an investigation. According to sources, GE Nuclear Power Division in San Jose designed and built a breeder reactor for PG&E at Moss Landing in 1968. It began operation about 1969. It was a very expensive reactor and operated until the mid to late 1970s, when it was shut down for unknown reasons. The control room and possibly the reactor itself were under the number 6 or number 7, the huge 535-foot smokestacks. There was an access stairwell to the control room under one of the towers with a metal surround that remained there until the 1980s. The demolition of equipment or buildings at Moss Landing pose a real hazard to workers and to the environment. Plutonium is considered by experts to be the deadliest poisons, and that's what breeder reactors make. And based on PG&E's safety background with Humboldt Bay Nuclear Power Plant, with its many problems, and there was actually a nuclear accident there in the 1970s, which PG&E covered up, and the damage to the community has never been properly addressed. Their spent fuel pools or dry cask storage is in an unsafe location, and again, no one in authority in the agencies are doing anything, and we know the problems with Diablo Canyon. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Secondly, I wanted to respond briefly to comments made about forest health. The forest has, I agree, been mismanaged, but one of the things that's been done is that ground cover and vegetation has been stripped out forest works as an ecosystem, and it's been turned into something that's not a preserve and not a forest. These pine trees can live to be well over 100 years old in a healthy forest, but the fragmentation of the forest, the creation of the breaking of the cover, the top cover of the canopy, increasing the loss of soil moisture and the heating it up, the exposure to wind and erosion, and the exposure to toxins from adjacent homes and buildings has created a real stressful environment for the forest. Carmel has taken the position of even if it's a dead tree, they don't take it down. That's an unsafe approach to anything. And I don't think that's the approach that's happening in Monterey. If a tree is leaning over, if the soil is humped up, any smart person knows that that tree is in danger of falling over and
Thank you,
is
Ms.
becoming a
Speaker.
hazard.
Thank you.
But
Your time
the
is up.
city needs to take a sensible.
Next, we have, I believe this might be Jim Cullum. Mr. Cullum?
Yes, I think I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How are you doing?
Great, I'm fine. Thank you. And
Hey.
good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Hans and the staff. Before I say anything, I'd like to commend Ray and the other awardees on the veterans who have served our city for so many years. I really appreciate their service. And I'm impressed with how long they've hung in there to take care of their community. Much appreciated. I don't want to say too much more than what has been discussed by Art and by Dennis. I am also a member of the Homeowners Association, the Skyline Forest Homeowners Association Board. And we've been on this issue of tree and fire safety for a long time. I would like to emphasize that from my perspective, it's important that the final decision about the removal of a private tree, I say the final decision, should reside with the property owner, the resident. Even if their perceived notion of danger is different from what the forester or someone else might be, they're not the ones who are exposed. It's the resident who's potentially exposed. And I think those of us who have been watching what's been going on, certainly this year, trees that have been blessed by the forester have fallen over, some have broken, some are uprooted, they go in all directions. And from a safety standpoint, the final decision should rest with the property owner. There's plenty of trees up there, and there'll continue to be plenty of trees in our forest to make up for the relatively few that would be removed for safety considerations by a property owner. I of course, would much appreciate that the forester and other staff would advise us property owners, if we're concerned about a tree, about some of the considerations that are at play and what alternatives there may be. But I don't think the final decision about a private tree removal on a person's property for safety reasons should be made by the forester or by the appeal staff. That's my 2 cents worth. And if there's any questions, I'd appreciate letting me know. But otherwise, that's all I have to say on the subject. Thank you.
Excuse me. There are no further comments on Zoom at this time.
Thank you, Clementine. Okay, and then we will take it to the consent agenda. Is there any items that the council wishes to pull? Dr. Barber, does anybody in the public wish to pull anything on the consent agenda? Mr. Riley? I have a number 8. Is that correct? So we'll pull number 8. Anybody else in the chamber? Is there anybody online that wishes to pull an item on the consent agenda?
No hands are raised.
Okay, and then I just ask if staff could give maybe a 2 or 3 sentence update on number 4. And maybe if we could do that before we take a motion, just to give a quick background on that. I'm not sure who's best. Rock,
Sorry,
paper, scissors.
I can jump in here. Sure. No, this is primarily administrative edits to the transient occupancy tax ordinance. Nothing substantive, changing tax rates or anything scary like that. So this is the second reading. The council already considered this at its prior meeting. So this would just approve it to become effective in 30 days.
Perfect. Thank you, Chrissy.
Mhm.
All right, entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of number 8.
Second. Nice. Was your mic on? Okay, perfect. Councilmember Barber, I see your hand up there.
Yes, but this wasn't concerning something that's not on the consent agenda. I wanted to see where I would have space to be able to talk about a concern.
Do you want to wait to council comments? Do you think that would be
Yes,
appropriate?
yeah, that'll be fine. Yes,
Okay, perfect,
thank you.
perfect. Yep, no worries. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent minus item number 8. Any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes,
Councilmember Hoffa,
Yes.
and Mayor Williamson.
That's a yes for me. And we'll pass it to staff for number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Principal Planner Fernando Rowery will present to you.
And if we could just do a quick, maybe 2-minute synopsis of that, and then we can maybe check in with him, Mr. Raleigh, to see
Yeah.
what his questions or concerns are with that item.
Or maybe if Mr. Raleigh brings up his point
Yeah,
of
we could do
concern,
that
we
as well.
might be able to address it.
Absolutely.
Yes, good afternoon again. Tom Raleigh. This time, my extracurricular activity as president of the Fisherman's Flats Homeowners and Residents Association. Back in the early 80s, retired back in 1981, and in 83, 84, there was a stellar group of citizens in Monterey that brought forth the Highway 68 area plan. Now, at that time, and I understand it's still in effect, the sphere of influence by LAFCO extends all the way to the rawest grade for the city of Monterey. Yet we have numerous developments in the county, starting with Laguna Seca Office Park, Pasadena, Halcyon Heights, Bay Ridge, Monterey, Tehama, that are all in the county. How did they get there? The city of Monterey Highway 68 plan says we cannot annex to the city of Monterey, even though it's in our sphere of influence, because of the level of service of traffic was too onerous. We have, if anything, worse traffic today than we had in the early 80s. The Highway 68 area plan, quite at length, talks about the housing problem on the peninsula. And it was envisioned that eventually the city would annex properties along Monterey Salinas Highway. The only properties since then that have been annexed, I believe, are the Ryan Ranch Office Park. We've recently done ordinance, blanket ordinance to allow housing where you had commercial properties on Garden Road, changing to residential. One of the things on the survey that the city is sending out right now that misses the opportunity when it says we're short of land for new housing. The land that's right at Tarpey's Flats is available, and I've talked to the owners, the Work Estate, Julie Workbeck and her son, Stuart Beck. They're willing to consider annexing. It's over 100 acres of essentially flat land. That is one example of land that could be annexed if we took the opportunity to update the Highway 68 area plan, which has never been updated. I've talked to your community development director yesterday. She said, the state won't allow it. We need to use the persuasive powers of this city to allow us for an 8-year plan, housing plan, to allow for changing our Highway 68 area plan to remove the limit due to transportation. The county transportation planning is working on updating the roundabouts. We know about it. The time is right. We should do it, and the staff should support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Anybody else in the chamber wish to speak on this item? Anybody online?
I don't see any hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'll pass it back to staff for a response to Mr. Riley's comments. Might be better if we have Kim, I'm thinking, just because it seems like there was a conversation between the two of them.
Annexation is something that can be part of arena planning if no other sites are available. If you want to annex a site, city has to commit to a time frame of up to 3 years to get the annexation over, get it done. So it is an option to go and connect with the Highway 68 site to take a look at that if there are no other sites that we can identify for RENA planning purposes. So that's part of the caveat.
So if I hear you correctly, we can do it only contingent on the fact that if we can't find
So
land.
I will ask him if I said anything wrong, or if she wants to say in addition to, that means I said something wrong. So that's the trick, by the way, when they staffers say that in addition to what the city manager said.
Maybe just elaborate a little bit more.
There it is.
So I think it's important to realize that the Highway 68 area plan was crafted by the voters and adopted by, through initiative process. So it's a very unusual planning document. I think we have 2 in the city that were initiated by the voters, and that's when they rezoned in the 1980s our visitor accommodation facilities and basically spot zoned our hotels. And they also put on the ballot the Highway 68 area plan. So that would be an interesting process to amend a voter adopted plan.
Perfect. Okay. Any questions or concerns from the council? We can also entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve agenda item 8.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Before we go to a vote, Mr. Riley, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for us to look at considering annexation of adjacent properties to the city. I do think it would behoove of us to prioritize looking at infill opportunities and what it looks like to use our current footprint. But if we can expand and do things in partnership with the county that allows housing closer to the city of Monterey, where one of the largest industries in the entire county exists, I think it's the right thing to do. So I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and we'll definitely take a look at it and see where the opportunities lie. So thank you for bringing it up. All right, with that, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hoffa,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Williamson.
That's a yes for me. And we'll adjourn to the Ocean View Community Service District meeting. There's no presentation, it's consent only. We'll go ahead and take public comment. Does anybody wish to speak on this item? Bob? It's good seeing you at Whalefest.
No whales though.
No whales. There was a big whale. Anyway.
Oh, I didn't go inside it though.
I didn't either.
Mayor, city manager and council members, here I am again, every 6 months, I guess we do this, but just give you a quick update where we stand. We did have the oral arguments on the appellate court occurred 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. Whoa. Fell off your chair. It's getting closer, huh? And it was an interesting case. It really came down to an argument as to whether a judge has the right to ignore the law, create a law, change the law on the purpose of equity. In our situation, we feel, and it's many of the attorneys say, it's a situation where they are very much against the law, what the judge had ordered. The order did some crazy things. It's a very important case. No matter what, we'll fight it to the end, it looks like, because the big issue being if it would be not overturned, title companies would be destroyed in California because there's no way for them to ensure, give a guarantee of title on a property. A judge could wake up in the morning, be in a bad mood, and just decide on equity to change the case. But we should have an answer within about probably about 30 to 45 days at the very most on that. And we're still looking to move forward. I was approached by a very large entertainment type group, just much like the aquarium, but with other products that would be a great fit in there. And they're highly interested. So we do have a path to go forward as soon as we get this cleared up. But anyway, I'm always around if you ever need questions. And thank you all for your patience.
Appreciate your comments, Bob. Anybody else in the chamber? All right, anybody online?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, no vote is needed on this item. It's to receive a report only. So we'll pass it to staff to give us an update.
Oh, there is nothing new to
Nothing.
report other than what's in the agenda report.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
Awesome. With that, we'll adjourn back to the council meeting. And we'll go to our public hearing item, number 14, master fee schedule, continued from March 7th. From the March 7th meeting, and we'll pass it to the city manager for staff presentation.
Yes, and I pass it on to Rafaela.
Well, that was good.
Yeah, thank you so much. I apologize. I was preoccupied with another question quickly. So go ahead, Rafaela.
Thank you, Hans. Good evening, Mayor and council members.
Good to see you in person too, by the way.
I know, right? I don't think I've ever been here in person during a
It feels
council
good.
meeting. Yeah. All right. There we go. So for our master fee schedule, just to let you know that, it's good fiscal policy for a budget, and also that we come and review our fee schedules every year. So we actually do that on an annual basis. So I'm just going to get right into what our changes are looking like. So just to highlight, so we'll start with the admin's services. So we have in city clerk, we have fees associated with changing the rental fees for the council chambers. And that's inclusive of any audio equipment and staff overtime and staff support. And then in finance, we have one increase for the return check fee, basically to cover the costs that we are charged by the bank for return checks. And city attorney's office, we have for appeals, we have fees, introduced new fees for the appeals hearing board, disabled access appeals board, and also the building and housing appeals board. And fire department, we have every year finance departments calculates the fully burdened rate. So we are updating schedule for the fully burdened rate for the fire department and also for the police department. There's also an increase of $5 to 3 CPR classes, and that covers the increase in cost for the certificates. And then there's also an increase for inspection fees. Police department also increased for the dog license fees, which is consistent with the county of Monterey and other surrounding cities. Public Works, there's an increase with the sewer connection fee, and the parking division just has a deletion and renumbering of the footnotes. And then for community development, so we have SB 9, the ministerial review is new per legislation, as well as SB 35 ministerial review is also new for per legislation. Then we have 100% cost recovery for appeals. And then under historic preservation fees, we have the Mills Act, demolition review, historic permit, historic preservation report review, and also historic survey. And then moving on to the library, we are eliminating fees related to the microfilm copies and also the fee used for the conference room. And then just things for administrative changes. It's noted in the master fee schedule, the certain fees are subject to annual CPI adjustment as of July 1st each year. So most of the fees that are updated, they use the CPI book for San Francisco area, and it's the April edition. So of course, it's not out yet. So as such, those fees will be increased by once it's published. So it'll still be effective July 1 by the CPI. And so our recommendation is that staff recommends council to accept the proposed changes to the master fee schedule as presented, and to adopt and amend adopt the resolution to amend and restate resolution 22077.
Thank you for the presentation. Is there any questions on the council? Yeah, Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you for your presentation, and good seeing you in person. Few questions. First, a process question just for my own education. So if there's a fee that later on in the year, we see that it's not doing what it was intended to do, what's the process for correcting that or changing it?
We'll actually come back.
So staff, depending on what department it is, will come back, we'll draw another agenda report and have their reasonings and then we'll bring it back to council for an adjustment.
Great. There was also a mention of, see if I can find it here in my notes, the historic preservation fees. Does staff believe that increasing these fees will discourage folks from preserving historic structures?
So I'm going to turn that over to Kim.
So I think it's important to note a couple things. Most of our property owners purchasing historic properties, they're fairly valuable in the real estate market locally. And as people are applying to rezone them, and they are also eligible for a Mills Act contract, which is a property savings contract, which reduces their fee, their property taxes about 60% below the current market value, if you will, of a normal property tax. And so as we go through and we hold 3 hearings to do that, we go from the Historic Preservation Commission to Planning Commission to City Council. We're recommending that we recover our staff time and fees to do that work.
So what Kim is not saying is the properties that are being purchased are purchased by people who are wealthy, and we feel that people can afford those fees. That's the bottom line. We're subsidizing a group of people who's wealthy enough to buy $1 million, $2 million historic properties. They can pay the appropriate fees. That's the bottom line that Kim danced a little bit around.
Yeah, thank you. And just for my own education as well, the folks who purchase these properties don't necessarily need to label their properties as historic, right?
Correct. There's no obligation. It's
No
voluntary.
obligation. Okay.
It comes, as Kim pointed out, with the Mills Act that reduces property taxes.
Got it. Okay.
And with that, we get probably 60% of the property taxes that we actually should get, something like that.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
No worries. Councilmember Hoffman? Perfect. Councilmember Barber? Any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. First, thank you so much for that. Wanted to just have a question on the community development department and public works, the miscellaneous item. It says administrative notification fee. What is that for the $111 an hour? I was just curious.
I will, I'm not quite sure right now because I don't have the fee in front of me, but that's basically the fee that we would charge if somebody wants some sort of engineering consultation, administrative services from us helping them. So that's an hourly fee, if I recall that correctly.
Okay, because this is notification, so I didn't know whether it was sending notification out to the public for something. I was just kind of confused on that.
Yeah. Councilmember Barber, can you help me where you see it in the package? I want to be sure.
Hold on, let me see if I can find it again. It is, well, now I just lost it. Hold on. It's like, looks like a page 2.
62.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 262. Yeah.
Yeah, so miscellaneous administrative notification fee and public improvement design service fees, are those the 2 fees?
Yeah, just not the design one, but just a notification fee. It's under like miscellaneous, and it says administrative notification fee for the $111 an hour.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I hope somebody will help me out with that one. The first one is the fee that I was talking about.
Yeah, it's on 262.
The next one is probably a similar fee that basically is based on outside of the scope of a normal fee that is being purchased. So, Councilmember, allow maybe public comments and we get back to you. I'm pretty sure we have the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Um, I had a question. In the presentation, it was identified that most of the fees use the CPI. And I was wondering how it was determined which fees would use the CPI versus the other ways that fees were assessed to determine the increase or the change.
So some of the fees, like if on the last page of the agenda report, there are, I listed that there are three different CPI books that we basically use and for particular ones. They are in the footnotes of the actual schedule with who uses which one. Some of them, I believe, or I'm not sure if it's ordinance or just by code. It says which fees are associated with which book.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll go out to public comment. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item?
Good afternoon again. I'd like to refer to the Ryan Ranch RV and boat storage fees. That particular site was a long project, was an NIP project when it was still called NIP, perhaps 20, 25 years ago. When a neighbor, Ted Trent, was the swim coach at MPC and had a humongous RV parked in his front yard. And the neighbor that lived 3 doors from me said they had to come out of their house every morning and look at the side of this humongous RV, which he had permits to build a parking pad for. Anyway, Ted Trent passed on about 10 years ago. Anyway, and that RV is not there. But the idea of an RV and a boat storage facility was not to make money for the city. The whole concept was beautification and aesthetics in Monterey, in the neighborhoods, to get them out of the neighborhoods and get them in a safe, secure storage. If you haven't visited the RV and boat storage, you're new in town, Gino, I'd suggest go out. It's right next to the corporation yard. It's secure. They put a security system out there as part of, I believe, the general improvement program. And so it's pretty secure. It's not perfect. There's been some vandalism over the years, but currently the rates going up are 20 foot, $69.50, 25 foot, $87, and 30 foot, $104. Is that going to deter people from putting their RVs out there? Maybe. Depends on how old it is, what their budget is, the personal finances. But please don't tie this to the CPI and force people to say, no, I'm not going to put it out there. I'm going to keep it in my front yard to make the neighborhoods look less aesthetically pleasing. The whole purpose of that, and again, it was expected that there might be some subsidy in the future to keep RVs and to keep the fees lower. So I'm urging, watch those fees. I don't know whether this is contingent. I don't know whether there's vacancies, but you can pretty much tell there haven't been many vacancies out there in the past, but I hate to see you raise the fees. And I've spoken to you before most of you were on here 4 or 5 years ago about the same thing of automatically raising the fees on something like boat and RV storage. Please don't do it. It defeats the whole purpose of having that facility out there for the citizens. Thank you.
Jeff Gorman again. I'll try not to make a habit of this, but I did see, if I'm not mistaken, that the library, oh, by the way, I had Coach Trent as a swim coach. I had no idea about the legacy, and I've lived here my whole life, pretty much. Didn't know about the storage yard. So, but on the library fees, they're getting rid of fees. That's pretty good. The one thing, and I'm not into fees, but I am a little concerned with some of our friends, John Lennon fans, et cetera, that you might get a pretty heavy usage of that is the microfiche capability still there? And if it is, you might want to leave it to the librarian at discretion of like waiving the 10 cents a page for a few pages. But if you want 10,000 pages, you might want to keep that fee. That's all I got for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chamber wish to speak on this item? Do we have anybody online?
Not at this time.
All right, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for deliberation. See, Councilmember Hoff is ready to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna move approval of the staff recommendation. I'll save my comments for discussion if there is a second.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and any discussion?
Yeah, I certainly hear Mr. Raleigh's comments, and I think we do want to make sure people are able to avail themselves of storage to beautify the community. I don't think these fees are out of line though, or are excessive. And so that's why I think I can support this. And the whole purpose of this fee adjustment is to try to be efficient in not making money for the city, but in covering the costs of city government so that other taxpayers aren't subsidizing the activities of other folks. So fine with this.
Okay. Anybody else on this item? I just will echo your comments, Alan. You know, one of the things that I think about when we're talking about public land is particularly with what the direction I imagine this council would be taking in regards to kind of using land for the need of housing and developing housing in our communities. And so what is the lost opportunities with using it for said purpose, when I think there is value of that, but we need to make sure that we're you know, capturing that appropriately. And is there a way that we can look at this more? I think maybe we can do a soft nudge to staff and see if when we look at this in the future, if there's other opportunities that exist there. But I think we're heading in the right direction here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll just say something, you know, former Mayor Clyde would often note is if this does become a problem, if we start seeing, you know, the storage facility underutilized because of this, we can always go back and adjust and revisit this. So.
Okay, and with that, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffa,
Yes.
Mayor Williamson.
That's a yes for me. All right, we'll go to the public appearance items. For number 15 is budget mid-year amendments. We're going to do one after another one here. Rafaela, you're going to be busy tonight.
It's Rafaela time tonight.
It is Rafaela time. We've been waiting for you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what is in front of you is our 2022 and 2023 mid-year budget adjustments. Rafaela will be presenting to you the bulk of the presentation, and I just wait until they show me my slide. Okay. So in general terms, there is good news at mid-year to register. And with that, Rafaela, if you can forward the slide, please. Okay, Rafaela, go ahead. In German, we say, was lange währt, wird endlich gut. That means what takes a long time will be really, really good.
The anticipation is killing me.
All right. Go ahead, Rafaela. So, thank you for jumping directly to my part. So when we created the budget last year in April, May, June, you might recall that I was sitting here and telling you certain things that we were really not looking forward to as part of the budget year that is now behind us, 22-23, and I'm sorry, 21-22, and the outlook for that. What we have, what this mid-year budget highlights is that we are carrying still 55 to 60 vacancies of full-time employees at any given time of our operation. All those positions that are in there are budgeted. Now, what we always do when we present a budget to you, we anticipate salary savings and we put in there a certain percentage where we feel confident that we will have, through attrition, retirement, vacant positions. The current job market, though, is of a different kind, and we have sometimes positions we advertise 2 or 3 times, and we fill it at the 3rd attempt. We have people coming, but we also have people leaving for other cities that usually are in a different pay scale than we pay, or that can offer promotions that we are currently not able to offer to retain those employees. So we have, and Rafaela will show you the numbers, and they are also in the agenda report. We have significant salary savings that are coming from carrying anywhere between 55 to 60 vacancies for positions that are all budgeted. Those positions are, of course, not all in the general fund. The bulk of them are in the general fund, but they are also in our special enterprise funds like the parking fund, sewer fund, stormwater fund, etc. We also saw last year that we were underspending in operational accounts. While at mid-year, we were filling up some of those accounts based on the input received from our departments. We ended up underspending in some of those areas. That also is a number that is north of $1 million that we saved in underspending in our operational accounts. What does this mean? We didn't have to buy operational supplies for certain purposes. We did not spend the money that we thought we would spend on professional services, etc. So that was part of the positive mid-year budget review and the ending or unassigned balance, as we call it, from fiscal year 21-22. We also saw stronger than expected revenues in TOT. Remember when I presented to you the TOT estimate, we said we have 2 competing TOTs. We have a TOT from a very reputable analytical company that said you will make about $14 million in fiscal year 21-22, $14 million in TOT. And we had the MCCVB estimate that said you will do $27 million. So we thought one was rather conservative. We thought the other was rather progressive. And we anchored our TOT estimate where we thought it would be prudent for us to do that. However, the progressive TOT estimate was overtaken actually, and it came in higher than we expected. With that, of course, sales tax is a partner of TOT. The more people are sleeping in town, the more people are also buying stuff. And also we had a very modest increase in the property tax. So that all contributed to an overall very positive picture that we are presenting to you over the next couple of slides. What we are proposing also is, as part of this budget, that we are continuing to walk down the path of strengthening our fiscal reserves. When you read the agenda report carefully, I put a little footnote in there to share with you where our neighboring cities are, just to show you where Seaside, Pacific Grove, Carmel, etc. are with their reserves. Our reserve policy is right now 16.6% of our general fund. When you look at our neighboring cities, they mostly have a 2 or a 3 in front of their 2 digits where they want to have reserves. So again, our budget amendment helps us and strengthens our fiscal reserves. And as Rafaela will show you, we will continue down the path of actually creating facility reserves that we started doing also about a year ago or 1.5 years ago. So with that, Rafaela will not spare you the nitty-gritty of the budget now.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how we closed. Hans just talked a little bit about how we closed out FY 21-22. So we projected that we were going to be at $6 million with the unassigned fund balance for general fund, and we actually came out at 7.8 with the revenues and that he talked about, and also the underspending. So we came out with 7.8, and so that it is one time So we wanted to allocate the one-time savings. So we'll show how we want to allocate it for this proposal. Our updated revenue projections. Again, we have some new numbers for our revenues now that we think that we're going to hit to bring our revenues up for this fiscal year. The same thing with expenditures and expense projections. There's been requests and some other items that needs to be adjusted. And the update position control list, we're actually pulling that part. We're going to bring that one back at a later time. So just to look at what the change in fund balance looks like, if you look at the column for fiscal year 6/30/22, these are our audited numbers. So basically our start with the 36.7, that's our general fund balance. What we really need to look at is what's assigned and unassigned. So we're looking at 14.8 is our current balance in the economic uncertainty as of June 30, 2022. Our proposal is going to be to take it to 17.3. Capital projects ongoing 1.6 to 2.5. Other designations, that's a few different things that total into that 2.6. Our encumbrances, and we'll come back to these details a little later. So to give that total, this is what makes up that 7.8 and where that and what's the difference between that, between the here's this 32.6. This is that what makes that up. And then for 2023, we are estimating after everything, all the mid-year adjustments and also the proposals that we're bringing in to fund reserves, we're expecting to end 2023 with 3.3 million to help with next year's budget. So this is what it actually looks like. So we started out basically with a balanced budget. We did some amendments throughout the year up through now. And what we're looking at in revenues, we are asking, projecting an additional 4.4 million in revenues for this is all general fund. Expenditures raised up to 3 million. So total revenues over expenditures for the main year adjustment is 1.4 million. And then this transfer out is the CIP back in CIP adjustments back there. It's a transfer back to that fund. So we're looking at a total for what we're looking at for FY 22-23 to come to is revenues at 93.4 million, expenditures at 96.18. So that's a deficit of 2.6. But we have transfers in of 658. And then now the transfers out to take that 1.2 back to NCIP at 1.3. Transfers out for debt service, 543,000, and net capital, 750,000. So it gives us a net use for transfers in and out of what negative 1.9. So we're looking at for FY 22-23 that our ending deficit would be 4.6 for this fiscal year. However, I did say we started with 7.8 to begin with, and we're projected to end at 3.3. So it's all going to be kind of absorbed in that. So just to give you an idea now of the revenues and where those amendments are coming from. Additional, we're looking at an additional 125,000 in property tax, an additional 291,000 in sales tax. Our TLT, we're looking at an increase of another 2.6 million. And then interest income, 100,000. Our intergovernmental, 873,000. Our rents increase of 320, fees and charges, 75,000, other revenues, 3.9. The total of this is what takes us to the 4.4 million for amendments. And that makes our total amended budget for revenues for general fund of 93.4 million. So on the expenditure side, and this is still general fund in this base, but this is by department. So in community development, we have 1.5 million. We'll talk about what that part, that 1.5 is a little bit. Conference center, 48,000, fire, 900,000, non-departmental, 183, police, 169,000, public works and engineering, 92,000, and parks and recs, 142,000. So a total of expenditures, 3 million of amendments. That total to 96 million of expenditures for general fund. So our proposed funding for the reserve accounts, We have economic uncertainty reserve at 2.56 million that we want to put in that. Pension reserve to add an additional 2 million. Conference center reserve, 750,000. Sports center reserve, 750,000. Technology infrastructure, 750,000. And city reserves to add 300,000 for that. So other proposed allocations from the one-time efforts, we want to repay the Neighborhood Community Improvement Fund. The 1.2, this is the money that we actually had them, what they agreed to fund in the beginning of the year for the dehumidifier for the sports center. And then also for community investment portion for the city-owned affordable housing project. That's right here on Van Buren and Madison. That's 1.5 that we would like to put into that project. And then moving on to our special revenues funds, this is just going to be net, the net increase of revenues. So for Thailand's, there's a net increase of revenues of 411,000. Housing net increase in expenditures of 20,000. The Neighborhood Improvement Fund, increase in TLT revenue, 500,000. Measure PNS, there's an increase in sales tax, 348,000. Enterprise funds and internal service funds. So our parking fund, it was just enterprise, have net increased revenues of 411,000. And then our internal service funds, vehicle replacement, we're looking at net increase revenue 6,400 and vehicle maintenance fund net increase in expenses of 260,000. Moving on to capital improvements projects. For a general fund, we have the Monterey Conference Center, the cooling towers, which is cost about $1 million. Marina fund, parking pay station upgrades is about 30,000. And then the Thailand's funds, there's for 30 Fisherman's Wharf, needs roof repairs is about 180,000. So those are the capital improvement projects. And then there is a correction. So for the economic uncertainty reserve, in the agenda report, it lists 2.8. It is actually the 2.5. It's correct in the resolution. I just wanted to bring that attention so that the agenda report is kind of corrected. The economic uncertainty is a moving target as it is a percentage of the general fund. So as we continue to work on the report and expenditures, that got missed. Total got missed, put in the right place in resolution, but in the report it got, the original amount was there. So it is 2.5. So the position control list, this is what we will bring back. Pulling it now from the mid-year budget, it was an addition of a deputy director for Public Works Administration. It'll come back to council to establish and approve the salary schedule. And with that, our recommendations are to want to approve the mid-year budget amendments, designate the funds in the various reserve funds, and to amend the agenda report to include the correction. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Raphael. Council, any questions? Councilmember Barber, do you have any questions? We can't see you, so just go ahead and.
Can we just? check-
No, thank you.
Okay,
Can we, Mr. Mayor, we just want to check that we shared one information right. We worked on one slide just momentarily before so this, what we tried to say there, and I want to be sure that the attorney is comfortable with that we will need to come back to the council to establish and approve the salary for that position.
Right. So if they don't modify anything, the position control list will be updated in your action. And I think what this is saying is it's going to be pulled from the budget. So either the position control list is not being pulled and it's being adopted tonight, and subsequently you'll have an update to the salary schedule, or the position control list is being pulled from the budget tonight, and then both the position control list and the salary schedule will be bundled together at once. So at this point, it's really just a procedural question, whatever you'd prefer.
well, I would offer if it makes sense to us, the council, we just approve the position control list and then have the item come back separately when it's ready. I do have a few questions. when I got onto the council, we were practicing, we were operating under a biannual budget. And so I'm just wondering what it looks like for us to get back to that, or is the plan to not? There has never been direction from council. I think it was something from staff, but I think it would be good for us to be in alignment with what the vision is in regards to how we manage our budget.
Yeah, and I'm a really proponent of biannual budgets as well, because the budget takes a lot of time to establish and is a really work intense project. The reason why we switched to annual was because we couldn't really see where the trends are going, and giving a 2-year budget in 21, 22 was hard to do because we really didn't see where the economy was going based on COVID. I look at this year as more an even out year. Going forward into the next cycle, we are preparing an annual budget, just because that is what we really foresee right now with a lot of moving parts. But I spoke with Rafaela earlier this year when we targeted to go back to biannual. We will not be here to have an biannual budget in the next cycle. 23, 24 will be an annual. But after that, I hope that based also on our experience that we have at that time, then we will go back to biannual and things have been hopefully smoothed out. I'd like to point out also, I briefed you, the council, about this recently as well. We have a variety of new critical members in the budget team right now that are going for the first time to the city budget with us right now as we are doing it. And it takes some expertise, and especially in the projection of revenues to stay within a biannual budget. So I feel very comfortable as the city manager right now to say, let's do an annual for next fiscal year, because that's what I feel is part of my responsibility, to show you something that I'm confident in, and then go back to biannual. I think we have then smoothed out all those kinks that we are working through right now. Kinks is maybe a too harsh word, but all those things that we're trying to figure out.
Thank you for that. How much of the unassigned general fund budget, the 7.8, how much of that could potentially be due to the increase in TOT, the 2% increase that we did the TOT, and the 1% we did the sales tax? We did that all during the pandemic. We started collecting those all during the pandemic when our budget was severely impacted. And I'm wondering how that might impact us not really accounting for, not really creating any new programs in the city yet, as a percentage, have increased our revenue.
So the TOT is probably anywhere between $6 to $8 million in additional revenues that we are getting from the 2% increase. And the sales tax is probably that jumped up by $4.5 to $5 million.
Okay, and how are we accounting for the use of those new revenue? What is the, I guess, the intent in regards to how we use those new revenues?
So this is not new money that's sitting somewhere and waits to be harvested. It is money that helps us to keep up with our current expenses. Remember last year at the budget presentation in June, I was talking about that we don't have a revenue problem as a city of Monterey. We have an expenditure problem. We are spending too much money on certain activities that we as a city are just used in spending. And so things that fell behind are investments into CIP and other elements there. If we would have had all positions filled, and if we would have spent all operational accounts, we would have spent close to $5.5 million more. So if we have every position filled, as we have budgeted, and if we spend all our operational accounts on holding the line there, and don't go into the deficit, we would have spent $5.5 to $6 million more. That in connection with the other increased costs that we have, which are pension obligations, and in connection also with the COLA increases, the healthcare cost, et cetera, et cetera. Insurance for us and risk management in some areas doubled. Workers' compensation went up. So we have also larger bills to pay. There are, like I said, unassigned balances that we are presenting. We are treating them not as reoccurring balances right now. We are treating them right now as one-time savings that allow us to do one-time things. But the additional TOT, the additional sales tax, was created not to create new reserves, but it was created, if council recalls, to keep up with our upcoming expenses and our upcoming pension cost. When you look at the pension cost right now, you will see that the actuarial is looking probably a lot grimmer than it was a year ago, and we will probably also get a higher charge for our pension. So and that's why part of the next agenda report that Rafaela will present, and I promise you that will be her last one, is talking about Section 115 fund, which is an alternative fund for pension funding. So yes, there will be extra funds available, but they are not probably in that category. And I might pitch also, there are gaps of funding that we are not funding right now. We don't take care of our facilities as we have to take care of them. And many things have to go into our own facilities as well. Again, our challenges are not revenues, our challenges are expenditures.
Every year that this is a more of a comment, but it kind of leads into what you were saying a little bit. Every year that I've been on the council, we've been in a surplus. When we look at the projections, there's always we always project a deficit. So there's this huge gap in between what we're projecting and what we actually are producing. And I think when we're talking about planning and looking out, it's appropriate for us to make sure that we're giving more. And of course, things are unknown, so we can't predict that. But I think if we can find a way of getting more accurate projections and figuring out where we're off, and I think we've had some conversations offline about this, it alarms me a little bit. It's great that we're in the position of having 7.8 million to figure out what to do with, but it also gives me some concern that there's all of a sudden this great amount of funding sitting out there that we're now figuring out where to place it. So I think that we just need to, I think we need to figure out how better to do some forecasting projections so that we can be more in alignment with what we truly feel like our budget's going to look like.
So this is easier said than done. And let me tell you why. We had a swing in 18 months of $32 million in revenue losses. A swing in 18 months of $32 million in revenue losses. That affected all the funds, parking fund, hotel tax, sales tax. And so to swing that pendulum into an area where you really can nail it down again is quite a challenge. When I talk about sales tax or the TOT revenues that we estimated, we had a Dunrunyon estimate of $14 million, and we had an MCCBB estimate of $27 or $30 million at that time. So where do you land? You don't want to oversell the council that you are sure we get 30 million, and you come in at 24, and guess what? All the calculations that you have made to spend money for that, we come to you and we say, well, we cannot make those expenses, or we need to touch the revenues. I completely understand what council says and what the mayor is saying. We need to get to a point where we have an unassigned balance estimated of maybe $1 million. And we come in at $1 million at the end of the fiscal year. We will get to that point. The challenge again that we encountered is historic and fragile. We didn't know how tourists would return. We didn't know how much pent-up sales volume is out there. But I completely get at what the mayor is saying. 50 to 60 positions vacant is something absolutely new to us as well. We are not holding back on recruitments. There is no hiring chill. There's no hiring freeze. We pump out recruitments as fast as Brett and her team can do it. But we still carry as we gain employees, we say goodbye to employees. So we have to figure all this out right now. And I completely appreciate what you're saying, because I also don't want to come in front of you and cry wolf and then correct myself in March. So I completely get it. I just want to share with you the challenges we have, and I have not even talked about customers returning back to the city in recreation and the sports center, and hopefully also the conference center. So again, this is all what we need to tackle right now.
Absolutely. I completely acknowledge there's no silver bullet to this. So I appreciate staff being able to find a way of working around and us getting better at this. It kind of ties to my next question or thought here, which is around our fund for economic uncertainty. We have established a 16.6%, and as indicated in the staff report, we have a footnote of what other cities are doing. And I think it's prudent for us to bring that back for a discussion to the council so that we can look at what opportunities look like for us moving forward in the future. When the pandemic happened, we noticed that the fund provided the city to continue functioning for, I think it was 3 months or something along those lines, 2 months. And so, how do we evaluate that? Do we set it just at a higher percentage? Do we say that we want it to allow us, the city, to be sustainable for 6 months? What does that look like? I just think that the council having that policy discussion so that we can reevaluate where our goal is there, I think would be helpful. I have one note, and it just.
Mr. Mayor, we haven't gone off the public yet.
Yes, sorry, it was supposed to be a question, but you acknowledged it. So, and my notes updated, and I don't know where I was. Let's go out to the public for now, and then I can finish the rest when I get back. So we can start with the chamber. If anybody else wants to speak during the public comment, please step forward.
Two very quick items. One is, I don't know, I looked at the staff report and it was long and to read it. But anyway, I recall that you had a sea level rise, a pocket of money. I didn't see it on any of the lists of contingencies, but I recall it was like 500,000 or something. It was a
Yes.
considerable amount of money. I would suggest that you put that, annotate that, and that, because that, I see that being a mega billion-dollar project that's going to be needed for the city of Monterey in the not too distant future. So second item is, I'd like to really didn't get a chance to thank the mayor and the city manager for having the meeting with the presidents of the residential neighborhood associations last week. And we ran out of time to really talk about housing because we got bogged down on NIP, which some of us have been involved in that for a long time. And some of the issues had already been discussed at the NIP project. So I sort of apologize for that. In fact, I thought wasted a lot of time on that. We didn't get enough time to discuss housing, but thank you. And thank you on the NIP project for having a project engineer that's really been helpful in starting to move the project list forward. That's always been short. And so on NIP, I still call it NIP, but NCIP. But anyway, whatever it's called, this really helps expedite the projects. And I met with them. I've given a tour of our neighborhood and the fact that we have a mixed blend of county areas and city areas. And it's a real challenge for the city staff to understand the mixture of jurisdictions. So I think it's really going to help. And thank you to coming up with the 1.2 million. And I think I pass on Rick Hoyer, chair of our committee. Thank you for coming back with that money. So it's appreciated. And I think we're going to do the best we can to spend it efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowley. And just for the record, the amount for the sea level rise contingency fund is 250K. And I promise that we will talk about housing more at the next neighborhood president's meeting. So thank you for that.
Hello again, Mayor and City Manager, Council. Bob Follis, Monterey resident. I always am impressed whenever we have these budget discussions because you guys still on top of it. I really appreciate Hans, how well you know what's going on. And you too, Tyler, you've stepped in well in picking up the pace on this. I do want to point out, I think it's important that we keep an eye on the upcoming risk. And a lot of the financial industries, they're really stressing that risk level that's increasing greatly. I think in the next month, month and a half, we may see a lot more difficulty in the economies as some of these banks fail. And I think the city needs to position itself in at least worrying about a 6-month period, and it could go longer than that. But it's something I think you want to take a look at, increasing that reserve for safety and do a lot more risk management of what's going on. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Emmett, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
80-mile-an-hour wind gusts, huh?
Yeah, be careful out there. Don't
Yeah.
get blown away.
Tell me about it. Good evening, everyone. My first time here. As a business owner in the city, one thing I'd like to point out, I heard the city manager say many times, we have a spending problem. As a business owner, first thing I do is take a look at my expenses. And I hope the council takes a close, hard look at the expenses. And I heard the mayor say, hey, you know, we could use this money for services. Of course, safety is great. We've been talking about safety online, offline, addressing it with various city officials as well. And perhaps something could be done around safety. But yes, to the city manager's point, I think a hard look at the expenses is what's called for, especially since I'm a business owner and that's the first thing I do. Hey, you know, my revenues were low or income was low in a quarter. You got to manage your expenses. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chamber wish to speak on this item? All right. Do we have anybody online?
Yes, we do. We have Esther Malkin. Go ahead, please.
Hello again. So I'm thinking back to the budget meeting that we had a couple of years ago when the pandemic had just started and it was so dire. And I literally remember choking up while I was speaking during public comments. So this is a tremendous turnaround that I'm sure everybody is much happier to see than where we were back then. I will point out again that while the city considers cannabis revenue, I think you need to take a hard look at that and update it to what is current on that, because that is what's been talked about to possibly fund a renter assistance program. Now, as you all know, I've been very much in the forefront of getting the 100% affordable projects on the table with you all. And I completely have no problem with Mid-Penn getting as much money as they need, but I don't think that at this time we should be postponing creating a renter assistance program to cover the people that are not covered by HUD requirements and income levels, which are unrealistic for our area and are all pre-tax numbers that are used to qualify people to get help from any of the projects that are federally funded. So when I see $1.5 million going to Mid-Penn, who's going to be opening up that project to the whole county, I have pause that we're not going to do something more immediate for the people that are currently living here and currently working here. So at this time that we finally have some extra funds, I don't think that putting off creating a program that is going to benefit a lot of residents that didn't qualify for what we had going on during the pandemic. And particularly when this cannabis conversation is quite precarious, no matter how much you want to deny it, cannabis is not going to be a reliable revenue. And I don't think that it would be fair to give Mid-Penn that gigantic amount of money without taking care of a more immediate and local group of residents that it would be helping. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, there are no further hands raised.
Perfect. I will just quickly respond to Esther's comments. You know, it's almost this scenario where we're damned if we do, damned if we don't type of thing. The value in investing this 1.5 million with the project that MidPenn's doing for us, the city, is to allow this project to, if I understand this correctly, qualify for a greater number of points in receiving greater public funding. So this is of added value. And why I express this concern is because I hear you, Esther. I agree we need to do something that takes care of the majority stakeholder community within the city. But we also have this obligation or expectation to create housing. And so here we have something that's right in front of us, and we can easily move this further down the field. So we have to do it all. There's no question about that. But I support the 1.5 million going to MidPenn for that reason. I will defer my comments until I let my colleagues speak here. Anybody? Alan.
Yeah, first of all, lots of really good comments from the public as well as from my colleagues. As far as sort of the end of year surplus versus deficit and just trying to be more accurate in our projections, I appreciate the explanation the city manager gave in terms of these are unusual times that we're coming out of, and that would make it extremely difficult to forecast. I do share the mayor's desire that in the future we try to get to a place where we are sort of more on point with our projections, because I just think it's helpful for planning. I think it's helpful for the community and for our employees just to have a better sense of that. That being said, it's certainly a better situation to be ending the year with a surplus than, finding out that in reality we do have a year to date deficit that we have to deal with, and we have to make cuts. Those are not fun. So we're not having to make cuts today, so that's good. As far as sort of the various funds, it's, I think, again, a positive that we are moving towards a general policy of planning for long-term expenses, in the various reserve funds. So that's good. I'd like to even see more of that as we look to our 23-24 budget, like 250,000, for example, in the sea level rise or climate change fund, whatever you want to call it. It's not enough. And that's not even enough on an annual basis. It's got to be more than that. Ditto, I think, for our infrastructure fund, we know we have, I don't know, something like $150 million in deferred maintenance on our buildings. And we've got a police building that needs a lot of care and attention. We've got a library. We've got lots of buildings that need work that it's just been deferred for not 2 or 3 years, but for decades, because we didn't really plan in the past. So I'd like to see more in our 23-24 budget. I'd just like to see those funds really augmented, as well as the pension. So let's see. I'm glad to see we're able and in a position to reimburse the NCIP for the money that we used on the sports center. So that's a positive development. And then also agree with the mayor, biannual budget as soon as we can. It is better. Obviously, the further you move out in time, the more those projections become even more guesswork. So, but still, it's a good idea from a planning perspective. And then as far as the 50 to 60 sort of unfilled positions, okay, it was interesting. So my understanding is it's not like those are sort of unfilled by design. It's just we're not able to keep up. We're loose. Okay, so that's different. In general, that's not something that I would like to see, is that many unfilled positions. Definitely wouldn't like to see that sort of by design. In other words, if we need people, we need to hire people, right? And if we don't need people,
then we need to trim those position lists. So those are my thoughts.
I see Councilmember Barber's hand up.
Excuse me. So first of all, thank you so much for this report. I know it's a lot of hard work. Ms. King, thank you for the work that you've done to end in the surplus for this year. That says a lot of what you're doing and what your staff is doing. So thank you for that. Thank you, Hans, as well, for your management. I do agree with the mayor dealing with the annual budget. I think it is a lot more proactive and easier to be able to get the vision of what to expect. But it's great to have the surplus and how we're using the different reserves. My other point is I understand about how we're using some of the salary savings and putting into some of these reserves. I think that's a great idea because right now, like one of the I think public comments had said about the risks being really great that may be coming forward, that we need to be proactive in planning a lot more in our reserves and getting ready for that. So I do applaud that because otherwise the salary savings can't be used for anything that's sustainable. You know, it has to, the one-time fees and for us to choose the reserves, I think that's very wise to do at this time, not knowing how sea level rise and other pieces are going to come up. So thank you.
Councilman Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. So I agree with all the points here shared by my colleagues and the public. So I'm not going to repeat. I'll just take the opportunity to plant the seed in terms of my desire to see in the future more conversations about how we allocate unassigned funds to things like the Casanova Park Center, assistance for our renters, as was mentioned, and also some support for our businesses, however we can, in terms of marketing or facade improvements or that kind of thing. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
So one thing that I'm interested in having a conversation about is having some type of potential budget or finance committee. You know, I'm really big on transparency and finding ways of getting folks involved in the community. And if there was a way that we could, as a council, give some level of expectation, what we're looking at, how we're looking at moving forward, and then maybe we could task this committee that's made up of residents to create a more transparent process and allowing folks in the community to get more involved. I think that might be a great thing as we look at rolling back out a biannual budget. And it can be things like having these difficult conversations around addressing our expenditure issues. If we can allow that public and transparent process and engagement from folks in the community, and they give us a recommendation, it makes it a little bit easier for us to look at where we can trim the fat a little bit and be a little bit more proactive in addressing not only this revenue piece where I think we've done well, but also this expenditure piece. And that could look at other opportunities for increasing revenue. So I think that's something that I'm hoping that we can talk about more as a council. I can support the allocation for NCIP, but it does give me a little bit of pause because we don't know what the future holds and there's a lot of unknowns. And when we had the neighborhood presidents meeting last week, I heard a couple of folks get up and talk about concern around just addressing the issues as they currently exist with NCIP. And we are just starting back up again starting from ground zero. And there's already projects that we're seeing not getting done in the fiscal year. And so I think addressing those issues and maybe taking a pause might be helpful to make sure that we're getting the projects done, because I think that's one of the concerns that I hear from folks that are involved with NCIP. Before the pandemic, we saw projects on the NCIP list that were sitting there for, several years and not getting done. So I want to make sure that we address that. And maybe one way of doing that is looking at the particularly positions that we're wanting to fill around this area. I know that we have our engineer now, but I know that one of the a couple of the positions that have been hard to fill are these engineer positions. So do we look at going above markets in those spaces. I don't want to go too far into that discussion, but I think we need to fix that before we look at throwing money around in those spaces. So just something for us to think about long term. And I think this was brought up by Councilmember Hoffa, but I think the reserve funds need to be a top priority for us because the future is unknown. We don't know what the impact of the economy is going to be in the near to medium term. And we really need to make sure that we're going to be ready for that so that we can weather that storm well. And so just want to really reemphasize that point. If there's a way that we can allocate more funds to each of those reserve accounts, I think it will serve the city well. And I think this goes even to, the funds that we have established for vehicles. We're going to have to transition our fleet of vehicles in the city to electric, and that's going to cost us some. So how are we preparing ourselves to be able to deal with these challenging issues moving forward? I'll say one last thing. Another good example is Measure P and Measure S. We have a 1% sales tax right now that's going to end in 27. So we're talking about four years here. And then what? Then what are we going to do to have funds for fixing our roads and our sidewalks? That's it. Unless we pass another ballot measure, how are we setting ourselves up to make sure that there's funding set aside so that we're not having to keep going back to the taxpayers and asking for more and more and more? Let's be responsible and set up the funding. None of this is easy. It's all challenging stuff, but I think we need to spend a lot more time as a council and with the public on having these discussions on how we manage our budget. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the
Second.
staff recommendation.
Perfect. Motion and seconded. Any discussion?
I have one thing regarding the last point about sort of road maintenance. So this is something that even before we passed the original Measure P, I had a lot of concerns about, because again, for decades before we passed that sales tax measure to pay for, street repair and sidewalk repair, pretty much we didn't really budget above and beyond the money that we got from the state gas tax.
Mm-hmm.
And so my recollection is that hovered somewhere around 900,000, maybe 1.1 million. We're on $1 million. And it obviously isn't enough. So I think one thing maybe that would be helpful in the next year or so, or two, but sometime in the near term before the Measure S sunsets, we need to look at what do we need to be able to budget to sort of maintain where the street quality is at that point. Is it 2 million a year? Is it 3 million a year? And then we got to figure out how to budget for it at that time.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? All right, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffa,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes.
and Mayor Williamson.
That's a yes for me. And with that, we'll go to good discussion. Thank you for that. With that, we'll go to item number 16, establish section 115 trust. That's the staff for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council received a presentation about section 115. I think we did it so far twice. You authorized us to go out with an RFP to find someone who could help us manage the section 115 fund. The section 115 fund is basically an alternative to create reserves for those unexpected CalPERS increases in pension funding that will allow us to ride out better those adjustments that can really lead to actually cuts in the existing operational account. So the section 115 trust is basically a side fund that is dedicated just to pension payments. So this fund cannot be rated for any other purposes. And you received a briefing of this a few months ago. Rafaela has those slides that show you when it was, and we completed our request for proposals. We got 3 responses back, and with that, I'll hand it over to Rafaela.
Okay, So I want to get right into what our UAL is. So each year, the cities were required to pay into CalPERS, our retirement system. And the contribution amount is based on an actuarial calculations that's provided to us annually by CalPERS. They kind of lag about 2 years behind. So a lot of the numbers you'll see, it'll be either as of June 30, 2020 or 2021. It's not old data, it's just the reports that we get, they come like a year later. So we're expecting one to come in June and the next one to come in August. So the components of the payments that we make is the normal cost and also the amortization of the unfunded accrued liability, which we call the UAL. The normal cost is a percentage of the total active payroll. The percentage in recent years has been ranging anywhere between 10 and 12%. And the UAL is the present value of future employer contributions for that service has already been earned. So the contribution that we made for 22-23 is 14.9 million, and the one that's projected for the 23-24 fiscal year is 14.7 million. So our current position for our pension liability, so total unfunded accrued liability as of June 30, 2021 is 132.8 million. And due to the market conditions right now, any gains that we had when the market went up, they're basically going to be lost by the next time that this actuarial report comes up, because the first time we came back last year, we came in the spring and it was 170 million. Then this report comes out for 2021, and then it's 132 million. Like, yay, we did wonderful. So now we do know that PERS has reduced their our discount rate down to 6.8. And so anytime they reduce, that means there's more that the city actually has to pay into it. And it means that basically the market went down and they didn't make the returns. So at some point they have to make the returns, or somebody has to pay into that. So to let you know what it is right now. So if you look at line 4, well, we have 4 different groups. We have the miscellaneous group, which is pretty much the majority of staff. Then we have safety, that's our fire and police. And then we have our PEP, where we have separate ones for police and fire. These are the ones that, as of the pension reform that happened in 2013, these are the ones that PEPR employees got to pay into their own retirement. So on line 4, if you do the calculations, the valuations, that is the amount going across of how much unfunded liability per group. And if you look at the percentage on line 5, that tells you just how much funded. So for miscellaneous group, they're only 75% funded. Safety is only 73% funded. And then the PEPR is of 102 and 103% funded. So those are good because we pay into them. And then moving on to the OPEB liability, which is other post-employment benefits. And those are basically the city provides for retired employees, the principally health insurance, the healthcare benefits. So our unfunded balance here as of June 30, 2020 is 8.4 million. So we'll just look at the last column, June 30, 2020. Looking at line 3, the unfunded is 8.4. And if we look at we are 37% funded for OPEB. So again, there is significant room where we need to actually start putting money away. We've been talking about. So how are we addressing the liability? So the city desires, we know the city desires to start funding the unfunded liability and the pension obligations. So in FY 21-22, council approved 1.1 million to be set aside the pension reserve fund for that purpose. And that was in our mid-year last year. And then with the adoption of the 22-23 budget, council also approved an additional $1 million to be allocated to reserve fund, again, within the budget. And then in September 2022, we came back to council. Council established the pension OPEB liability reserve policy, which requires a minimum of $1 million to $2.5 million a year to be set aside annually. Yes, at council's discretion, a dollar amount. The council also agreed at that point that we need to create a Section 115 trust as a strategy, and directed staff to come back with a recommendation for a trust administrator. So we went out, we released a request, an RFP in January of this year to provide the Section 115 trust administration services. We received 3 proposals and the top 2 were considered. So the benefits, so the Section 115 trust is the Internal Revenue Code. That's where the Section 115 comes from. So some of the benefits of the trust is that there's a greater expected return which lowers our liabilities. Contributions are considered assets, which offsets the liabilities on our financial statement. So it gives us in a better position on our financials. Pre-funding is considered a best practice by our Government Finance Officers Association. It improves our credit rating companies. Credit rating companies, they look more favorable when we actually have irrevocable trust and that they're actually pre-funded. And then also we have the city has more control over the assets, including the contributions amounts and when we distribute and the risk tolerance levels of the investments. The assets can be transferred to the retirement system at the city's discretion. So when we decide that we have this money, we want to send it over to CalPERS for the retirement system, we have it's at our discretion when we want to do that. And it can be used as an emergency source of funds by reimbursing the general fund. So if we get into a position where we are running short, we can actually take the money that we've set aside in the pension and use it to pay for other pension obligations or reimburse the city for some of those that we've already paid for that fiscal year or the prior fiscal year. So as long as the funds can only be used for pension or OPEB liability, but just there is options of some flexibility there. And so comparisons of the top two, CalPERS and PARS. So for the trust structure, CalPERS has two trusts. They have a pension and OPEB. PARS has one combined trust. The fee structure, CalPERS 10 basis points for OPEB, 25 for pensions. And then for PARS, it varies based on whatever investment options that you choose. Ranges from 31 to 60 basis points, and then those fees actually decline. The more assets you have under management, the lower the fee is. The investment choices, there's 3 portfolios for OPEB and 2 portfolios for pension under CalPERS. PARS, they have 2 what do I want to call them? Money managers, basically. So Vanguard, they use Vanguard and Highmark. So under Vanguard, they have 4 different strategies. If we choose to use Highmark, they have 5 different strategies, model portfolios. So there's options, there's more options there.
Can I ask you a quick question on that? Who chooses that? Like how do we determine who would choose amongst those 4 different strategies or the 5 in the Highmark?
Well, actually, we work with them and we build a team basically between finance and city managers. We actually look at it and say what makes sense for us. And based on what our objectives are, what our risk tolerance is, this is how we put together what we think is the best model for the city.
Okay, thank you.
And then who controls the investment? So currently under CalPERS would be their board would actually control the investments and how the money is and how and where it's invested, versus using PARS and their trustees between Vanguard or Highmark. We actually have more control over how and where we're investing. So as opposed to CalPERS, like right now they just lowered the interest rate discount rate to 6.8. We don't have any control over that. And it's the same people that are managing our CalPERS now would be the same group that's managing here. So this gives us more PARS, gives us a little bit more flexibility and how and where our earnings are coming from. Both companies are experienced. Of course, OPEB management in CalPERS, 15 plus years, 39 years, and administering retirement plans out of PARS. Section 115 Trust. CalPERS has managing 598 California agencies for OPEB, and then PARS has 500 trusts nationwide and then 158 in California. And so we selected PARS. So the reasons why we're looking at PARS is there's more investment options. It's a separation from the same retirement system. There's one combined trust, and then we have more control over our investment selections. And with that, our recommendation is 1, to establish the UAL and OPEB trust, appoint a public agency retirement services, which is PARS as the trust administrator, authorize the finance director or designate as the plan administrator, authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents to establish the Section 115 trust, and then finally approve the initial funding at $2 million from the pension reserve account. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to clarify one thing. There was a slide that could have been misunderstood with respect to OPEB trust. The city of Monterey does not pay healthcare benefits when after an employee has retired, but CalPERS is requiring us to pay into the OPEB trust fund established by the state of California. So we do not have healthcare benefits once you are retired. You go into the normal system of Medicare. We still have to pay, though, other post-employment benefits at a tune of a little over $1 million a year into the state to fund certain other post-employment benefits. But I just wanted to make it clear because the slide led maybe someone to believe that we have healthcare benefits after retirement, which some agencies have, we don't.
What do those other benefits look like that investment would be going towards?
Well, you want me to pull something out of my head? I don't know off the top of my head everything that's involved in that contract.
Okay, no worries. Council, any questions?
The PARS is also the one that Kamel selected about 9 months ago, 9 months ago as well. So
None for me.
Perfect. Okay, let's take it out to the public and then we'll come back to the council. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? All right, do we have anybody online? Oh, maybe we do. Let's start online. Let's check online while you're coming up.
no one online.
Nobody online? Okay. No, you're good. You're good. I was going out of norm here. I know. You're good.
Well, this is an easy budget meeting. I wish every budget meeting I'd been in was this easy. Well, hello again. So what I caught from the discussion or the presentation and then the discussion is like there's an $8.2 million hole in funding pension liability. There's an $8 million surplus. I mean, maybe 2 million's a little conservative and you could plug that hole a little further with the additional funds that you have, so that this is a bumper here. We're, looking at uncertainty, financial uncertainty in terms of the Fed raising interest rates. So far, it's been okay. There may be a soft landing, they might not be. And maybe this is the time to plug some holes that are long-term holes from just the fact that it is something that the city can't escape. And I'm just speaking as a business owner in the city. Just one thing I would consider, because if it's 8 million and change as the whole, and you've got about 8 million, why not plug a bigger hole in that ever increasing, expenditure? That's all. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Let's jump back and double check online just in case I confused folks too.
No, we have one online attendee and their hand is not raised.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the council for discussion and deliberation.
So if I may, so we used PARS at the former Fort Ord Reuse Authority Agency as we were transitioning to Sunset. That agency did actually get to a point where it had to pay off, that large unfunded liability for PERS. And we used PARS and it helped and it seemed to be effective. So I'm comfortable moving forward with the recommendation to use PARS as the staff is requesting.
I'll second that.
Okay, so yeah, maybe I'll just make that a motion.
Oh, sorry. I was assuming that was a motion.
Yeah, I didn't make it explicit, but yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think this puts us in better financial footing and gives us that flexibility, that additional kind of rainy day, if you will, in case there's some economic uncertainty. So I think this is a good thing to just kind of make sure that we're addressing our pension liability while also making the city in a more financial secure position. Anything else from the council?
I'll just quickly just say that I agree with what you're saying. I'm very familiar with CalPERS. and PARs. And I think this is a great solution that the city is going forward to. We need to make sure that we are taking care of our staff. And I think that's important. And that includes looking at their benefits.
Okay, thank you for that discussion. And with that, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hoffa,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Williamson.
Yes, we have 5 minutes and I'm going to get us out here on time. So we'll go to council comments.
I think Kim had something she wanted to say earlier, so.
Oh, that's right.
I'm gonna defer.
Thank you. And I'm going to take more than 5 minutes now. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna have to put a timer. Now you gotta get that
Now
time.
I got a 3-minute timer. Okay, that's
I'm
fine.
just messing with you. Go ahead.
It's well, really, it's really in concern with proposing that the city that we look at writing a letter to our state legislatures and CPUC concerning PG&E, dealing with these last storms. A lot of the neighbors and businesses that I've spoken with, there's been a great impact. And so I think we need to be able to, at least as a city, talk about what that impact looked like and how we can be able to mitigate that in the future, dealing with preparation. I mean, these storms are not surprises. A lot of these things we've been talked about, and it's been over and over, and even response time. So, and a lot of businesses and citizens were really impacted in a great way. And I heard a lot about trees tonight and dealing with the storms, but it wasn't just that way. The power was a big thing, and you're talking about food spoiling, businesses closing, losing money, even community, citizens losing food, spoiling because of being without power for 4 days. New Monterey was impacted heavily, and so was downtown and parts of Old Town as well. And so I just think we need to look at possibly, we know that we don't have the authority with PG&E, but I think writing a letter from the city would be something that would be positive in showing them how we need to respond in the future.
Thank you for that. I think we can all agree that it would be a good thing for us to move forward on that. Anybody else? Well, on that tone, I did spend some time going around and talking to residents and business owners about that very topic. And Councilmember Barber, you and I had this discussion too, offline. And so I think having a letter, what's interesting is where is that public discussion happening where we're able to give feedback to PG&E, a corporation that is a little bit more disconnected from the needs of our residents. We've had people in this city that were without power for almost a week, and the implications of that with people's various health needs or taking care of their family. I mean, we take for granted what it's like to have power, but how are we being more climate resilient? So I just wanted to identify a few things on the PG&E storm inconvenience payment program. On their website, there's a provision that provides $25 for outage that have lasted 48 hours. And then it's an additional $25 for every additional 24 hours. I don't know, but that doesn't sound like a reasonable reimbursement amount. It's almost as if to say, keep it and don't, maybe lower the rates at that point. I will point out that the CDC's website states to throw away out perishable food in your refrigerator. That includes things like meat, fish, cut fruits and vegetables, eggs, milk, and leftovers after 4 hours without power. So I'm just thinking about the consumer. And what about all those folks in our community that are already living life on edge? So this is just completely unacceptable. To change it to a more positive tone, between 6 p.m. on, this wasn't last week, I can't even keep track of time anymore. It wasn't last week, it was the week before when that last set of big storms started and a majority of folks lost power. Between 6 p.m. on Thursday and noon on Friday, our fire department tackled a never seen before 136 calls out, mostly to down trees and power line related issues. So we're seeing record numbers of calls to our police, our fire department. Our police department had to respond to calls, and they were busy as well trying to assist with these issues, and our public works department. So there was folks throughout the city that were responding to the needs of this unprecedented storm system that had impacted our community. And so I just wanted to end this with a thank you to our staff for not just taking care of our city, right? But you're also being mindful of your own families and things that you have going on in your personal life. So, we acknowledge that and we thank you for all the work that you will do. And with that, I'll pass it to Hans for city manager report.
No reports.
Whew, I went over a minute. Gosh darn it, I talked too much. All right, we'll adjourn 6:31. Thanks, everybody.